That's the real,
Yeah,
That's
you
the
know,
real.
Bolu did one.
Like he
Yeah,
opened?
yeah. Bolu opened in Lagos and Minneapolis.
Elijah was Banky, you'd have been chilling.
That guy would have been cool. Welcome to Common Sense, where we have real conversations around money moves of Black successful entrepreneurs. From their financial wins to their setbacks and everything in between, we love to hear about their journeys and spread the knowledge so others can learn and be inspired. Welcome back. My name is Ayo Idowu. I'll be your host, and today I'm so excited to have real estate professional, financial literacy advocate, and overall family man, Elijah Bankole.
What's going on, man?
What's up, Elijah? Welcome, welcome.
I am very honored to be here. Excited.
I'm excited to have you, man. You were when we were getting ready to do a season in Minneapolis, you were one of the first people we wanted to call. We've all been following your story on social media, and obviously we have our past relationship as well too. And I think just your ascent is exciting. I think a lot of the entrepreneurs are gonna be ready to hear about it.
I'm glad to hear.
So, with that being said, how about you kick us off? Who is Elijah Bankole? What do you do? What does the real estate professional side look like?
Yeah. So again, my name is Elijah. Thanks for having me. So just on the real estate side, primarily, I'm in a very niche part of real estate called wholesaling. Right. I found it very randomly on YouTube in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was too crazy to be true, which essentially is just flipping contracts.
Okay.
Never taking ownership of a property, but
Mm-hmm.
just controlling it. And making a check as a essentially middleman. So found that out on the internet in 2018. I went, full force. The following day, I just
Mm-hmm.
started kind of put into action some things that I
Yeah.
saw on YouTube. Took me 13 months to get my first deal.
13 months.
13 months.
Wow.
So
Patience
I
is a virtue.
found out about this skill set. I knew it was a hustler skill, which is why it's not meant for everybody. But I went ahead and started making moves the next day. It took me 13 months of cold calling, getting rejected. Got my first check in May 2019. That was a $25 check. 25,000.
Oh, I said 25.
Yeah.
Guys,
So
$25, 13 months. I'm like,
which was still let me fine, but that check was pretty life changing. Not obviously it's a nice check, but more importantly, it was a proof of concept.
Mhm.
To really say this is real, that someone
Yeah.
this is I took that and had that proof
Man.
of concept, and I just continued to do that. So today I still wholesale it primarily, but I've also since then started cherry picking my own deals to create a rental portfolio. So that's what my real estate side looks like now.
So you do you do wholesaling and buy and hold as well?
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll do some minor, flips. So we call them wholetail, which is like
Wholetail.
wholesaling on the retail. So,
Okay.
either a quick cosmetic. Yeah. Somebody came up with that. But it's an industry term, wholetailing. So that's just
Okay.
meaning wholesaling on the retail market, on the open
Okay.
MLS market. But primarily I wholesale. And like I said, I started really, because I learned early on from a lot of the OGs that the real wealth is built from actually holding properties.
Right.
So rather than just, flipping everything as a quick wholesale check, like I said, I started cherry picking the ones that were really good. That I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell this.
And it probably takes a lot more patience, right? I feel like a lot of people love wholesaling because it's quick cash. But when you talk about the equity play, which is sounds like what you're having a conversation about, holding properties long term creates longer wealth, generational wealth, maybe an asset that's sending out cash flow on a regular basis, or just, as the markets that start to bounce back or certain markets bounce back, you're doubling a property maybe over 20, 30 years, right?
Absolutely. So the wholesale is the sexy part of the business because you're
Right.
making fat checks, and that's
Right.
why you'll see, online from someone that made their first
Right.
check. And like I said, that 25 grand was a good feeling.
Yeah.
But the non-sexy part is really the wealth building parts, which is, like you said,
Yeah.
holding that long term. My goal usually with my rentals is I'm trying to net $250 a month.
Yeah.
That's not as sexy as making 25 grand, or, I've seen bigger checks for
Yeah.
the wholesaling,
Right.
to be honest. But the 250 net a month doesn't sound like a lot.
Yeah.
But like you said, if you really know what you're doing and what you're
Yeah.
playing, the chess and not the checkers,
Yeah.
you'll realize in 10 years,
Yeah.
where am I in just NI equity?
Right.
The cash flow is much higher than 250.
Yeah.
You have the principal pay down
Yeah.
that has been done by a tenant.
Mhm.
And of course, as you probably know, the tax write-off that you get for
Exactly.
having an asset. So, the long-term hold is really where true wealth is built.
Yeah, I think when we talk about building wealth, a lot of people fail. Well, let's talk about financial statements, right? The cash flow statement and the balance sheet, two different
Right,
sheets.
right.
But like you talk about the buy and hold, strong balance sheet, cash flow statement, more for flips, right?
Mhm.
So we'll talk about a little bit more of that later. I'm excited to hear more. But let's talk about kind of how you got into it, right? I know you told us you found it on YouTube, started calling, but what was life like prior to being a real estate mogul, if you will?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm a mogul, but
You're a mogul to me, man.
that gets thrown around a lot. But, when I think mogul, I think we're people. But no, I
He's
appreciate
modest
that.
too, everybody.
Yeah.
Very modest.
So yeah, prior to me finding real estate and wholesaling, to be honest, I don't think I have a rag to riches story like a lot of people. I mean, obviously, I'm Nigerian. You know, back.
Oh,
Yeah, you're about to be exact. If you're oh my
me
god,
too.
that was a guest. So back home, life was obviously quite different.
Right.
I would say we're probably lower middle class based on the Nigerian standards.
When did you come here?
So 1999.
Okay.
September 1999 is when we came to the country. Myself, my four siblings, and my parents.
Okay.
So back home, life was definitely different. It was way more challenging than it is here. But once we got here, I think we were able to live a decent life. I went to college, got a degree in management and information systems, worked in the corporate world and healthcare consulting for many years before I left corporate, and so I was making pretty decent, salary.
Yeah.
That was gonna be my first year of making six figure before I left corporate. So that was a big benchmark for me. So
was that your thought? Like, I'm just gonna work and
100%
move up in the rankings of this company and just
100%
live a good life that way?
100%. So as you know, that's the blueprint that we're given by our Nigerian parents.
Yep.
Is go to school, get a great job,
Right.
lawyer, doctor, engineer. Or failure is what they say.
Me, I was a failure.
Yeah, according to that description, I was a failure. But my parents were a little more. They were pretty chill. So they were pretty proud of me for going to school, getting a good degree, getting a good job. So I was moving up in the ranks, like you said, and that was always the game plan. As you know as well, I had a DJ thing that was very successful. I was pretty well known in my community,
and that's understated. You were the DJ.
Yeah. So I had a pretty good footprint in the market, and I was making really good money from that as well. But never did I think I was going to leave my corporate because it was just a good balance.
Between the two, right? Weekends making like good, fast cash money for a couple hours, and then a very strong job with promising future, right?
Exactly.
It's just like, I think I figured it out. I cracked the code.
Exactly. And people will ask me, when are you leaving your 9 to 5? So why would I ever do that? I have a good balance. I can take my suit off, get into the club, put my sunglasses on, and be a different individual. And I serve a different audience and a different need. So I was very okay with that. Life was pretty good. Met my wife back in college. We had our first child then. So things were going pretty good. The only difference I saw is once I found out about wholesaling, I really doubled down on it, and it started growing. It got to a point where I did feel like I was walking over dollars to pick up pennies.
I love that analogy. By the way.
So it wasn't. I didn't go out saying, "Let me look for a way to replace my 9 to 5." It was a niche that I found. I thought it was going to be a third major hustle. Was my game plan, and
so
it was for
a third job.
I thought it was going to be a third income, and it was going to be a great way to continue to build my income. And it was for about a year and a half. But eventually, I realized that, wow, this actually could exit. And I've never prior to that thought about leaving 9 to 5. Like I was certain I was going to do 9 to 5, build my 401k, and retire like I was supposed to. And so I started realizing, like, man, I'm making not just good enough money, but this could really give me a life that lets me be a family man, where I'm not having to answer to a boss. And really the straw that brought the camel's back, I remember, was when my daughter was sick. She was probably I can't remember, not quite a year yet, but it was something very minor. But she had to go to the ER. And I was trying to balance the meetings that I had before my wife called me and say, hey, our daughter is sick. Can you meet me in the ER? And so I was like, well, let me do that. So I told my manager, I was like, hey, I got to run to the ER for my daughter. And she didn't say no, but she did a lot of questioning, kind of show me proof, let me get a doctor's letter. And it angered me a lot. Yeah. Because I'm like, man, put yourself in my shoe. I just got a call from the wife. I got to run to the ER. So that was one of the...
Like, I don't want to go to the ER.
Exactly.
Like, I would rather not, but...
But, life happened. And I was a pretty good employee. And so that was one of the moments I was just like, man, I kind of hate this feeling of, having to talk to somebody and get permission. And so that was one of the pivotal points that I told myself, you know what? Let me find a blueprint and a way to exit from a 9 to 5. So long story short, I built the wholesaling business strong enough that I was able to exit. My wife and I, we had a very clear... I wasn't one of those people that was like, let's burn the ship and just quit and just be out. We had a very clear game plan of what it would look like to quit before I quit 9 to 5. And once I did that, I've never looked back.
Well, I feel like that's the story of a lot of entrepreneurs. It's something that doesn't sit right with them. Some people aren't doing well in their jobs, but most entrepreneurs, I mean, in my mind, entrepreneurship is much harder than working for a company, in my mind, right? Some people might be harder, easier, but with that being said, if you're really good at making somebody else money and only taking a portion of it, you can work just as hard and make the same amount you were making for somebody else. But then on top of that, the freedom, there's something that just doesn't sit right with you. Sometimes the teaming aspect, working under somebody who's not a great leader, that's one that's one similarity I see between a lot of entrepreneurs. So when you made that jump, what was like, tell me about that jump. Was it, I finally replaced my income, I want to go, I started making more, I want to go? Because obviously from the DJing, you were very popular
Right.
You're a very popular DJ. So that might have been, it was a hustle, but it was a passion too, right? You enjoyed doing that.
Yep.
There's got to be something. I mean, obviously you had kids too, but there's got to be something that made you just want to say, I'm dropping it all. This is where I want to put all my eggs because I can provide for my family. I can create free time, and then I can build a legacy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it started with the monetary dollar amount. To be honest, once I started realizing I was making, essentially what I was making
Yeah.
in a year, possibly in a month, from my 9 to 5.
So
again,
was it that first check that you were like, okay, I just made my salary?
No, not quite.
Okay.
Not quite. Yeah. I mean, when I got my first check, 25 grand, I was probably making 60, 70,000
Okay.
In the corporate world.
Mhm.
So it wasn't, again, at that point, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this could be life changing because now I can be, at some point in a few years, I see
Right.
myself making 6 figures in corporate,
Mhm.
but I can build this wholesaling thing up enough that I could, my goal was to make an extra 10, 20 grand consistently a month.
Right.
Because I'm like, that is more than my check right now.
Exactly.
So that was already good enough. So
Yeah.
by the time I was ready to leave, it was because I realized that one, I can make a significant amount if I focus all time and efforts into this wholesaling thing. But two, again, I started kind of envisioning what I wanted my life to look at as a family man. So if I have kids, again, with that situation of having to take permission to, go to the ER or just not being able to be there as much as I wanted to with my kids, it got very, very important to me that I really set up a life that I wanted. And I saw that wholesale was going to let me do that. So I just focused on how do I get out of 9 to 5. Like I said, the wife and I, we have a very clear game plan. And that was, she requested, she said, you know what? I support you. I know you can do it. What I would ask just to feel comfortable is have 12 months of your income set aside from wholesaling. Let me just see so I can log into the bank account, feel good, know that we don't have to worry, which was that was a very fair ask for me. I did that and I told her, hey, we're done. And she was like, put in your resignation letter.
Not only a fair emotional ask, in the financial industry, we recommend stuff like that for taking risks, right? It's funny, I feel like entrepreneurs are good for taking risks. Like that's what we do. We take risks. But at the same time, it's hard to tell somebody who wants to bet on themselves to hedge their bets.
Right.
Because in their mind, technically, you shouldn't have a plan B if you want to achieve a goal. But it's like, financially, you should have a plan B, right? Because I can show you the other side. And it's like, you don't want to go there if this doesn't work out. Now, I plan on it working out, but it doesn't. So I love that idea. I think it's a strong move. I don't think enough people think about that when they're jumping ship.
No, you're absolutely right. Because entrepreneur, usually if you're in that field, you are a risk taker. And I think when it comes to balance, I talk to my friends a lot about, when the Bible says you need to be equally yoked, the more I'm developing as a husband, the more I'm really realizing how important it is. Because the wife and I, she really compliments me in that sense. I'm all about the risk. And mind you, by the time I was quitting, we already had a reserve. Because as you know, we followed Dave Ramsey and all that. We were debt free already. We already had reserves. But
Which is another great story we'll talk about.
Yeah. So we already had reserve, but she was like, just have salary also put aside for 12 months, which to me I thought was overkill. But I say, you know what? This is part of how we got here. Is she kind of levels me down and say, you know what? I know you can do it, but just for the comfort, just please do this for me. And I'm glad that she did because things did get. There's ups and downs in entrepreneurship that people don't talk about enough. And when those times come, we had the comfort of there's no pressure of where's the next check coming from because we had enough cushion.
Yeah, it's like you're the legislative and she's the judicial branch, right?
Facts.
You guys are checking each other.
Facts.
No, I love that. Okay, so let's talk more about wholesale. Well, actually, I'm going to take a step back. Obviously, the first check was $25,000 and a light bulb went off, right? That's kind of the theme with all our entrepreneurs. There's a light bulb that goes off like, if I do this X amount more times, I'd rather live this life than the other life. How many more checks did you get? And did the next check take 13 months? Did the next deal take 13? Like, talk us about growing that business and scaling, if you will.
Yeah, so
to a point where you feel comfortable leaving.
Yeah, so the first check took 13 months. Once you do that, there's a new confidence that you have as an entrepreneur because now, like I said, it was all kind of going off of faith for 13 months of cold calling 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, getting cursed out and hung up by. I'm asking sellers, are you willing to sell your house at 70%, 60% discount? And I got a lot of no's. But once I finally had that first check, it gave me a new confidence. So now my next call, I'm a little more confident. I've done this. I know what I'm doing is going to happen. So it took me a lot less. I think it took me about another 2 months to get the next one.
Really?
I built on that. So from May to December, I think I made about 60 or 70 grand in wholesale fees.
Okay.
Is what we call it, which is that middleman check.
Yeah.
So things started kind of rolling. So what I did was the following calendar year is when I started growing the company. So prior to that, I'm a solopreneur, right? It's just me. I'm wearing all the hats. I'm making the calls. I'm doing the marketing. I'm working the leads. I'm doing the disposition, which means I'm selling the deals to the buyers. All those different hats I wore myself. So the first thing I did was actually hire an executive assistant, which by the way, which is another kind of interesting part of my business, is everything that I do is actually 100% virtual. So my entire team is overseas.
Oh, wow.
I work. You'll see me post a lot on IG that I do legal Yahoo. We call it, which is not to support
legal scamming.
Yeah, not to support the.
Except it's real.
It's 100% not a scam, obviously. But
Right.
what I mean by that is I have the freedom of making the check strictly from my laptop because my entire business is set up off of a laptop. So my entire team is virtual. So that's the first hire that I had to start
was
delegating.
That purposely on your half? Like you didn't want to have people local? Or?
Well, in the business of wholesaling, a lot of those mundane tasks it's very common to have virtual assistant just because you can leverage, paying them well over there, but it's very little investment for us.
Expenses
so it's very common to have a virtual assistant as like an admin, which was my first hire. What is not very common is to have your entire team be virtual. But I started realizing that I am good at training to pass in knowledge. And, I can set up a team without having to oversee them physically. So that's how I grew the business, to your question. So I hired the personal assistant. My next hire was a cold caller to replace me and be sitting there on a dialer for 3 hours a day to speed up the process. Now, I give up a little bit of quality because they're not as good as me. But the difference is when I was with my child or trying to work a lead, they were cold calling and getting those new leads. So slowly I was able to hire on. Now I have a team of about 10 or so team. So I have cold callers that are dialing as I'm sitting here right now. They're cold calling, generating new leads. I have an acquisition guy. I have a executive assistant. I have a dispo person. I have a field rep when I need to go take photos of a property. So my entire A to Z is done by a team.
Well, you said something really good there. Delegation sounds like it was not really a struggle for you, but it was tough because they wouldn't be as good as you, but them doing it while you're doing something else that maybe requires more time. I had a mentor that told me that as I was scaling my business and hiring onto my business, I was like, I want to hire someone to do this, but they can't do it like me. I'm going to just do it. And then you basically put a value to everything in your business and say, which one of these tasks require A plus or A work?
Right.
If that's the case, you do that. Find out which tasks require B and C work, and you hire B and C people for those spots, right?
Yep.
I struggle with it because I'm perfectionist. I wouldn't say perfectionist. I'm definitely control freak when it comes to business, right?
Yep.
If we're going to mess up, it's going to be my fault. It's not going to be your fault. But there's just certain things that as a business owner, you don't need to be doing every day. And I love that you kind of had that epiphany. It sounds like the way you talked about it, was it pretty smooth, or did you have to come to terms of handing certain things off and delegating?
I think the delegating overall was not that hard.
Yeah.
But certain seats are harder to give up. So me giving up someone pulling out my list and doing Excel work for me, I didn't like that anyway. So I'm like, oh please, I'll pay you $5 an hour to take that off my plate.
$5. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but to your point, that is one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs because one, that's your baby, right?
Yeah.
You grew up from a vision to bringing it to actuality.
Right.
And possibly making money from it. So to give that up is a very hard task.
Right.
But the wiring just needs to be different to understand that. Accept that no one is ever going to probably do as good as you. Well, certain things like the admin task, they were way better at Excel than I was, anyways. So that part, I was doing myself a favor.
I can't spell, so when people send stuff from me or type emails, I'm like, take that.
Yeah. So certain things is like you're upgrading your business, anyways. But like for me, the sales piece, which is like my baby, closing deals. Not only do I good at it, I love it. That's one of the hardest seats to give up because it's a very expensive seat. Yeah. But again, what you're giving up in quality, so maybe now that 70% as good as maybe 100%, what you're giving up is consistency and someone that you can train and really create processes. So overall, delegating was not hard. Certain things about it was, but overall, again, I listened to a lot of the OGs that people that were successful that said, listen, delegating is where you're really going to blow up.
Period.
It's been able to let go of seats. Exactly.
Yeah, so let's talk about the sales cycle. Let's talk about what that looks like, especially for people interested in wholesaling. Like from the point of contact, I mean, you've had deals that take 13 months. You've had deals that take, I'm sure, weeks, months.
Right.
Talk to me about what that looks like, because obviously you're bringing people into the fold to take care of these. And then second question, what part have you now taken over and what have you handed off?
Yeah, so with the sales cycle, one of the beauty, among other things, with wholesaling is it's got a very short sales cycle, right? So again, wholesaling, very, very short.
Interesting.
Yeah, so again, what you're doing is you're reaching out to sellers that in some kind of distress, either they're in the distress or the property is distressed.
Yeah.
And you are giving them a solution of, listen, I can get this off your hands, quick and easy, cash, quick sale, right? And so I'm getting that property on the contract and I'm selling that, not the property, but the purchase agreement.
Okay.
So I bring the paperwork to them and say, listen, we're agreeing. So let's give an example. Our property is worth 200,000.
Mhm.
I call Ayo and I say, hey, I know your property was 200,000. I know it needs some work. Plus, maybe you're going to divorce and you need to sell it fast,
Mhm.
right? And so for
How
that,
do you find out they're going through divorce just by cold calling?
so that's a whole part of different skill
I'm just
set.
saying, like, first of all, what do you know about my life?
Yeah. So as you know,
Good morning, sir. I heard you going through a divorce.
I'm gonna tell you how. So data is the most the most sought after commodity right now. As you know, that's why Facebook, you're not there for social media. You think you are, but you really, they're collecting your data. So there's a whole bunch of third party companies that their job is we pay them a lot of money to give us data of Ayo's going through a divorce right now. God forbid.
God forbid.
It will not be a portion in Jesus' name. So we know that, Ayo's enemy is going through a divorce.
There we go.
And so we have third parties that we'll reach out to and say, hey, we're needing someone that might be going through a divorce, bankruptcy, pre-foreclosure. You pull that list, and then that's when you start reaching out to them to start cold calling and say, hey, would you be open to getting your property under contract?
So it's not the old school cold call list. Like, these calls are kind of sorted out already, and you're looking for a certain type of person.
Yeah, I mean, when you're getting the calls from a spam likely, it's because you've been targeted for something.
Is that you? Are you spam likely?
Well, I'm one of them.
Okay.
my team is one of them.
No, but interesting. I want to know, like, what pops up, who's calling, because when I answer spam likely, they always just hang up. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, no. So that comes from making a lot of calls. So once your phone number, so we have systems and calling system that we use, and dialers and things like that. But you make a lot of calls. Okay. The litigation and the carriers will flag your number as you make a lot of calls. This might be a spammer. But back to your question, so because it's people in distress that need to sell their property fast, it is typically less than 30 days from when you get that property under contract to selling it and getting what was 25 grand for me. So on average, 30 days from contract to close. My first deal, that 25 grand, took 7 business days from getting in contact with that seller, getting on the contract, finding a buyer, selling that contract to that buyer, and making that check. And the concept is actually quite simple. It's execution that's very hard. Talking to a seller, having them understand you bring value to them to sell their house at a 50% discount.
And it's better than foreclosure, right? Because foreclosure, you get nothing. I'd rather get something from you.
In that case, that's the problem you're solving is, listen, you can still save your credit. You can still, I can't give you what it's worth. We both know it's worth 150, but for me to make money as an investor, that, so you have to just be able to have that conversation, have them understand the value that you bring to them, and they'll take it or leave it. And a lot of times, if you can position it properly, you can make that money.
So as the middle buyer, or as the middle person, middleman, middle entity, how do you find the buyers? Are it private equity firms? Are they personal investors you have relationships with? Or
all the above.
Okay.
So that's kind of the different steps is find that seller, get the property under contract, get that contract, and sell it to an end buyer without ever owning it. That end buyer is, like you said, it could be an entity. A lot of times for me, it's personal relationship that I've developed with buyers, usually flippers, or a landlord that wants to build their rental portfolio, or someone that just wants to get a home at a discount off market, which means not on the MLS. So it could be an array of different buyers. But the point is you have a relationship that you can quickly flip that contract to and make a check in between.
And obviously you attain those relationships well before you even start reaching out to people, right? Yeah.
So for me, actually, as I advise people that are trying to get into wholesaling, I always say focus on the seller side first. Because if you have a good deal, there's enough buyers out there that will buy a house. You don't have to beg somebody to buy a house at a discount. So it is important to maybe start developing a relationship prior to finding that first deal, because you want to know maybe what a deal looks like, what a buyer would buy. But I think it's way more important to focus on the deal, because there's enough ways to sell that contract once you get out on the contract.
How do you recognize a deal?
Yeah, so we have, without going, I guess, too deep, but we have formulas. Like I said, if I go, so I'll run comps and say this house, will be worth, we call that ARV, or after repair value. Okay. It'll be worth $250 once I come in and put my sweat equity and, give it its full potential. It'll be worth $250. Yeah. How much would it cost me to get it to a $250 value? After I pay a real estate agent and closing costs, what's my cost of deal? Okay. And how much I want to make. So it's a very simple math that you'll do to say I should be offered the seller. The most I can offer Ayo is 120 grand to be able to make, 10 or 15%, whatever my goal is.
Including all the hands in there, all the commissions, X, Y, Z.
The contractor you have to pay.
For everybody.
Exactly. Okay. So you kind of do the math backwards to figure out what you can offer a seller.
Now, are there people that do wholesaling? Are there people that do wholesaling and they're also the flipper as well, or the owner?
Absolutely.
So you've chosen to be the middleman route, but are there folks that do middle and end game?
Yeah. So I think the reason I'm a big advocate of wholesaling as almost a stepping stone is you learn. So it's, to me, it's the best barrier of entry when it comes to real estate.
Yeah.
Because as we've talked about, you've learned how to find out what's a good deal.
Yeah.
How to comp a deal, how to, underwrite or analyze a deal. You've learned the sales skills to talk to a seller on how to sell you their house at 120 grand, even though it's worth 200,000. You've learned how to essentially be a business owner and find buyers, negotiate with buyers. So most flippers are not wholesalers. It's very hard. And mind you, when I'm selling them my deal, they are seeing how much I'm making, but they'll keep coming back because it's a job that somebody needs to do it, and they're not willing to be that person sitting on a
that finder's fee is valuable, right?
Exactly.
Or else they would do it.
Exactly. Yeah. If it was so easy, they'll be doing it. So yes, there are some flippers that will also wholesale, but most of the time, wholesaling, a lot of wholesalers will focus primarily on just on wholesaling. Yeah. What I advise is, as you start wholesaling, like I was told and I actually listened, is don't give all that away. If you're really thinking of long-term wealth building, you got to start keeping, some of those deals for yourself to build a rental portfolio.
Do enough people do that?
Rarely.
You don't think?
I know they don't. Yeah. And I always thought it was crazy. Just like agents. I mean, think about, and God bless agents, there's a marketplace for that. But if you actually talk and ask agents how many of them actually own real estate, you'll be very surprised to learn. Yes.
Like seasoned. I get a young agent, but seasoned agents,
if you ask a lot of them again. And it's a lot of time it's just lack of education, or I would say lack of vision of actually long term putting your skill set to work. But a lot of them, they don't own investment property because they're always focused on representing buyer or seller and not focused on the actual wealth building. Yeah. So it's very common to meet a wholesaler or a flipper that's all they've ever done. And just like in the corporate world, people don't realize it's just another rat race. You're just as good as your last check. Period.
And that last check can end.
It can end any time. And the more you talk to flippers, and you've said flippers are making $1 million a year, but not a lot to show for it because it's a revolving door until you learn to really start focusing on that long-term wealth building.
We've and I love that you kept going back. I know I said it earlier, but this is going to be a good opportunity to kind of hammer it in home for some people. We've talked about bridging this black wealth gap for the longest time, right? Especially here in Minnesota, the wealth gap between blacks and whites are the widest in the country. And it's funny because we're seeing more blacks in prominent places. We're seeing more people of color in general making more money than ever, going to college, graduating at enormous rates, grad school, professional school, doctorates, masters, XYZ, yet that gap keeps widening. The black wealth gap has been confused with the black income gap, right? And income, even, I'm not going to say we've solved that problem. We've done a damn good job of solving that problem and closing that gap, but your income only becomes wealth once you put it into that wealth bucket, and not enough people are taking the money that they're making and putting it in. So I love that you're talking about that. I've sat on properties that I easily could have got a 60 grand, 70 grand check for, but this will do me 10 times that in the future if I just hold on to it and actually play the $250 a month game, right?
Right.
And that's like the long-term wealth. I'm always preaching to people. It's like, hey, once you've attacked your income needs for your family to be safe, everything else, every other business move you make should be made towards that big payday in the future. Absolutely. Retirement, XYZ, equity, period.
Absolutely. And I mean, to your point, I think, like you said, a lot of times it's not really an income problem. A lot of people make, good money. Yeah. I think part of what, as you know, again,
spend good money too.
It's the consumerism part of it. Is most people are just so consumed, and I was a victim of it as well. Yeah. So I'm not, like that's
really?
Yes. Before the wife helped me, she was always good with money. Prior to our debt-free journey, I was a typical American in the sense that I had a nice job, and each time I got a raise in the corporate world, I felt the need to have my life reflect that, right? Which, we call lifestyle inflation. I needed
lifestyle creep.
Yeah, it creeps up on you because now I have to have a new car to show that, hey, I got a 10K bump. When really, when you do the math and they take the 30% off and, your check is maybe $300 more, but now you got a payment that is $500 more.
$500
And so really that raise was a negative, was a net negative and so it's just it's a consumer mindset. I think conversations like this and educating our people and just realizing like you don't have to look the part. True. If you read that, one of my favorite books, The Millionaire Next Door, which there was like a 15-year study by the author name is Stanley. I forgot his first name, but something Stanley, D.F. Stanley, I think his name was. But it was a 15-year study of just what millionaires actually look like. And what people don't realize is the people that you think are millionaires, they're in debt in their eyeballs. Like might have high income, but millionaire is not equal to income,
Yeah.
right? Most people don't know the formula for millionaire,
Exactly.
right? It's your assets minus liability is
Period.
equals your.
That's it.
So just
That's
because you make $1 million doesn't make you a millionaire.
You probably don't have a million.
There is a lot.
Yeah.
You see athletes make $5 million and go broke.
Man,
It's not so much about how much you're making, but
Yeah.
what you're keeping. And so just as we educate people more, understanding that it's not about how much you make, but
Yeah.
how you can keep it, and how you can maybe put in vehicles that
And
will help
water
your
it
net
and
worth
grow it like
and
a
grow
garden.
that
Yeah.
net worth is really where true freedom is going to come
Yeah.
from. So just consuming less. Like I said, I was a victim of having to look the part as a DJ,
Yeah.
as someone that I felt I'd made it
Your
in the
suits
corporate
were
world.
clean, though.
Yeah.
They were very clean. So you did look
Listen,
the part.
my wife let me hear it. She's like, I love the suits, but do we need a new suit every gig, every birthday?
You say
I'm like,
yes.
I'm DJ Baker. I gotta look the part, But eventually, once I was okay with not having to. Fun fact: when I was at the end of once I came to this realization of what I'm telling you right now, once I accepted that, you know what, I don't have to look the part anymore.
Yeah. Oh, it's
when we started our debt-free journey,
liberating.
I was driving a nice brand new lease Passat. I went and I gave it back to the dealership. I called my brother up. I remember my brother had a beat up Sonata that was just parked in my mom's parked in my mom's garage. I called Peter. I said, "Listen, how much for that Sonata?" He said, "What Sonata?" I said, "The one you had that's sitting there." It's like, "It's still there?" I said, "Yes." "How much you want for it?" He said, $1,000. I said, "Bet." I gave him $1,000. This thing had like 3 paints on it. Dashboard doesn't work. And this is me being the Jabanky, by the way. This is at the point that I was wired to say, you know what? I don't care what I look like, because we were so what Dave Ramsey called gazelle intense focus on paying off our debt. Right? We were paying off $162,000 in 34 months,
which is amazing.
Yeah. So we were so focused that I said, whatever I can do to throw towards that debt to build this long-term wealth, I'm willing to do. Right. So I stopped caring about looking the parts. I mean, I still look obviously fine.
You look good.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I was doing my thing, but I wasn't so focused on having to get a new shirt. So again, just the consumer mindset, once we can eliminate that, I think we'll really be free and be able to build some real wealth.
No, it's liberating, man. And it's funny because I'm a big believer in, with a lot of my clients, they'll get big raises, big bumps, life-changing money. People come to me once they start making life-changing money. And I've always told people, it's like, the money you're making now, like, let's act like we're not making it for a year or two, and then start to up your lifestyle. Because you never know, A, if it's going to be taken away, but B, your savings don't reflect it. Your investments don't reflect it. You still have debt from before, when the old lifestyle that you're not taking care of, right? At the end of the day, if you were to lose your job at that next point, it's all gone. It's I always joke and say that if you see me with a new nice watch, it's because I hit a lick 3 years ago. Right. It's not because I hit a lick just this morning, right? If you see me with a new car, which I'm praying for a new car, but that's because God's been good back in 2022, not today. So I love that. How about let's talk about the finances of your business. I love what we talked about, the personal finances, the finances of your business. Do you have certain financial sheets or statements that you really like to look at as the overview or the 30-foot level of how things are going? And then as well, just like making new money, right? Not W-2 money that's tax being withheld, and being responsible for your own taxes. And how were you able to handle that?
Yeah. So the most important number for me in my business is my net, my what I'm walking away with after expenses, right? So a lot of the wholesale businesses that I've seen, I've tried to learn from, I'm not the biggest and baddest when it comes to a wholesale operation. I'm actually quite, I'm mom and pop. I didn't try to overscale. But again, when I listen to people that maybe took the wrong turns when it comes to building the business, is a lot of them, they grow too fast. You start hiring, in-house acquisition guy that you're paying 30% of your check. So even though you're making $500,000, and I mean, in this business, you can make crazy money. There's people making $1 million a month in what we call a wholesale fee of that middleman money.
Wow.
Now, when that operation is so big that you have 5 sales guys that you're paying, 15% commission from each check, and you have a whole team, you might go home with 10-15% net. They could have done that with just 3 people, and just keep it simple, because isn't the goal to take home as much as possible, versus looking, having that sexy number as a gross amount that you're not really taking home. So for me, the most important number is that net amount that I'm taking after all expenses. Obviously, we have KPIs that I'll meet with my team.
Explain what a KPI is.
So key performance indicators are different. Like when I'm looking at my team that's overseas, I'm not listening to your stories, and what I want to know is, are you hitting your goals? So we have KPIs that we'll look at. We have spreadsheets that will say you're supposed to have this many leads a week, and I know that if you have this many leads, that means I'm going to have this many appointments to talk to sellers, which will usually convert to this many contract. This many contract will convert to this many closed deals. Not all contracts becomes a closed deal because sometimes things will fall out of escrow or cancellations happen. So I have all those data that I'm looking at. So from a very, 12-foot view of, I can just look at my company and just check in with all the key seats.
You didn't make enough calls this week. That's why.
Exactly. Is why are we, at X amount of leads versus what you're supposed to be. So we check a lot of KPIs, but like I said, my most important thing is all that should result in, obviously we have revenue goals, but more importantly, what's my net looking like? What's how can I keep my expense at a manageable level so I can still make sure this work is not going to waste?
Because net is Elijah, right? That's the money that goes to you and your family, essentially.
Correct. Prior to tax, obviously.
So I guess my question is, and maybe this isn't relevant. Excuse me. Maybe it isn't relevant now, but are there? I mean, you basically take deals on whether the net is there. But I guess my question are there deals that keep the business good and flowing, but maybe not be great net wise?
Yeah. So for me, if I can make a check, I'm taking the deal.
Yeah.
So
no matter how small.
Oh yeah, I'm not just
as long as it's positive and not negative.
100%. So I've done a transaction, just full transparent, because like I told you, I mean, my goal is to help as much people. So we've done deals that we made $100,000 on one middleman transaction, right? Or what we'll call a wholesale fee.
Are those some of your bigger deals?
By far.
Okay.
Yeah. So my biggest deal was probably a little over $100,000. Okay. And I've done deals. And so my first deal was $25,000. An average wholesale fee nationwide usually averages about $10,000 to $15,000. If you do it right, some are lower, some are higher, but that's kind of the national average. I've done 6-figure deals, but listen, I've done $500 deal. Yeah. Because again, the focus is to help a seller. If I can help a seller and I get paid in the process, obviously, we're problem solvers. Yeah. So the bigger the problem, the bigger the check, right? But I'm not at a point where I'm like, oh, 500, but that's not worth my time to be. No, because at the end of the day, those are base hits.
As long as it's positive.
100%.
You will say, sir, this can't work or madam, this can't work.
Absolutely.
Or will you try to say, hey, we need you to take 10,000 less?
Well, I will share that with them of why it would need to be 10,000 less for it to make sense for me. Yeah. And then it's up to you to make a decision if you want to go with me or not. Yeah. But what I'm saying, by the time I get into contract, and if I feel like I can make, the goal is to make our average. Our average is like 25,000. So our goal is we have a goal that we're hitting as part of that KPI of our average wholesale fee. But that's not always the case. And so if I get a chance to help a seller and I made $500 out of it, that's the money that I wouldn't have made otherwise. So I won't say no. There's no too small of a check for me to say no to.
It sounds like you found a really good way to decommoditize yourself. Because I'm not in your business, but I'm assuming people are in it for the money, right? Not a lot of people are just passionate about flipping distressed houses and being the middleman. Is that correct for me to think?
100%. 100%.
So you've basically come to a seller and you've made a differentiator in the sense of like, I'm not going to lead with the fact that you need to get about this house. I'm lead with hey, here are the facts about you and your lifestyle right now. I can help make your life better, ease the process, X, Y, Z, and you truly want to help people. And is that why you feel like you get more deals than the average?
Yeah, because a seller can smell, an individual can smell a car salesman or someone that's just there to
you
pitch.
Walked in with one of your old DJ suits.
Exactly. Man, get out of my house. So yeah, I lead with honesty because the truth is, everybody that wants to sell their house usually will call an agent. So part of the first question that I ask when I'm trying to figure out if I'm even a good solution for the seller is, why have you not called an agent yet? Everybody knows if you want to sell your house, call an agent. Yeah. Right? 98% of people are going to go call an. Everybody knows an agent. There's agents on the Facebook every day. Period. So why have you not called an agent?
Bus bench, all that stuff.
Everybody, everybody's got a license these days. So my first question usually to them is, why have you not called an agent? Because truly, I'm focused on problem solving. Because like I said, the check will come if you lead while actually trying to help somebody. And the truth is, that 2% of people out there that cannot go to an agent, either because of time, either because the property needs too much work to be market ready, or they don't have the money to get it market ready, is who you're really helping. And so if I lead with trying to figure out because again, most of them is going to be a no anyways. Most of them, they're not going to want the dollar amount that I would need for this to make sense for me. Right. So the quicker I can find out that I'm not a good fit for you, the faster it is for both you and us. Both of you. So yes, I lead with just a problem focus approach. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, I have agents that I can refer you to. I have contractors that I can refer you to. Right. And maybe that will come back as as karma in the future. But I just focus on problem solving and let the money part figure itself out.
So you've kept the human aspect in your business.
You have to.
I don't know, when you look at the business from a bird's eye view, it seems like a very transactional business, but you've added the human element and the emotional element to it too.
Absolutely. Which is why I don't get threatened by, when they say open door, and there's companies that have big market share. A lot of them have big market share, but again, they can't do what we do in the sense of
Yeah.
that human aspect. Is
Yeah.
I can talk to a old lady and say, here's why I can only pay this for your dollar amount, but I promise you, I have agents that you can
Yeah.
work with to get you that dollar amount if that's important to you. A lot of times they'll take that. A lot of times they will appreciate the honesty and they'll realize, one, I can't afford that, or I don't have the time for that.
Yeah.
This is the best, and we'll find out some middle ground that works out for both parts.
I'm going to pivot. As an entrepreneur, at what point did you stop doing the TurboTax life and like, I really need to have somebody working on not my investments, but to understand my taxes and maybe be more proactive than I used to when I was just working at the healthcare company?
Yeah, it was H&R Block for a while, and then it was TurboTax,
Yeah.
and it was probably the first
Because they were cheap, right?
Yeah, it was cheap, and it was it's simple when it's just one W-2 and maybe one 1099 that you have to figure out.
Yeah.
But once you start buying assets, you start making some serious money. That was so I would say after my first full year as in wholesaling is when I realized and actually my tax guy is very expensive. People will ask, when's your tax guy? I'm like, here, go call Matt. But once you call Matt, you realize, Matt, but I'll pay that money all day
because he makes your life easier.
100%. Like I said, I'm all about delegating. I'm a master delegator. Like I've realized that I could save X dollar amount by doing it myself.
Yeah.
But why would I not want somebody that this is their specialty? The same reason I had the financial advisor, the same time I had our CPA is when I had the financial advisor and say, give me a roadmap. What should I be doing?
Yeah.
Tax guy, how do I reduce this tax income? Because we don't talk enough about taxes as an entrepreneur because W-2 will take that for you and you don't have to worry about that.
Usually by that time.
By that time,
that's when you actually want to start talking about taxes.
So realizing that, one, I need to make sure I'm allocating my taxes
Yeah.
from the jump and just know that's not my money. But two, how do I reduce that? Which is, again, part of why I love buying real estate because, the depreciation and being able to have a huge tax write-off, that all came from having an official CPA that I meet with,
right.
Sometimes as much as once a quarter to just say, here's what my projections are looking like. What should I be doing? If I'm thinking I'm going to make this much money, how much real estate do I have to go buy? That's my favorite question to my CPA is how much real estate do I have to buy to have because this tax, people get worried about, people are not paying taxes. There's a tax bill that was written to help and to encourage you to provide housing for other people. So people are not breaking rules. Right. It's not some loophole. It's literally the government is saying, please buy properties to help have people have housing. And for that, we're going to reward you by letting you write that off over X amount of years. Yeah. So what I asked my CPA is, hey, I'm thinking I'm going to make this much money. How much should I buy in properties to make sure I can get as close to zero as possible? Because that's what happens when I buy a lot of assets. I'm providing housing, solving problem for someone that needs it. And the government, they credit you for that. And so, after that first full year of wholesaling is when I hired a CPA and a financial advisor to have a professional in my corner.
So that leads into my next question. Let's talk about allocating your dollars, your net income, XYZ. Obviously, it's not all going to your back pocket. I'm sure some goes to business development, some goes into buying assets so you can offset your tax bill, XYZ. How did you get good at allocating your dollars, and where does your money go for the most part? Yeah,
so a lot of this, again, YouTube University is crazy because that's my number one platform of education.
Really?
A lot of the stuff that I learned was self-taught, and obviously,
how do you sift out the content that's just not?
I mean, the algorithm talks to you. Once they know what you're interested in, a lot of the coaches. So that 13 months of me looking for my first deal, I found a whole podcast dedicated to getting your first wholesale deal. And so on my plane ride, because I was a consultant and I was on a flight every Monday and Friday, I would just listen to this podcast over and over again and just, digest the information. So the information will find you if you're looking for it. And so part of what I found was one of my favorite online coaches. His name is Brent Daniels. He had an allocation video, this same topic, a white dude that had, people on his platform and sharing he was friends with other races and they would share the problem that, black people don't have a good job. They don't do a good job of keeping their money. Yeah. And so he had a whole episode of how do you allocate your money? And so I took his formula, which is like 10% to tithe if you're a believer. Right. I put 10% away, for God.
Net or gross?
Gross from the very top. Yeah. From the very top, from before it hits my account, that's allocated for that. And you can have different definitions for that. If you want to just donate that or give that to a clergy, that's up to you, or whatever your definition is. But 10% goes to helping others, and then we'll do a percent for taxes. 33% is what he said, so I just followed his percent.
As far as saving, right?
Correct. Okay. From the gross that you put aside to just anticipate that check that IRS is going to have you. And a lot of time, again, to buy enough assets, it's going to be zero. And guess what? Now you got extra
Now you
savings
got extra dollars at the end of
that
the
you
day.
could just put to
into
use.
investments,
But the one thing you don't have to
vacation,
do
whatever.
is, worry about finding that check that the IRS is going to come looking for.
Yeah.
So 33% is taxes. I have it on Excel, so I don't have it off the top of my head. But then he has salary, I think about 10% or so. Marketing as the other one. So it ends up being obviously the 100%, but the biggest pie will be the taxes, the marketing, and you have a small salary that you pay yourself to make sure you're getting something, but not too much where the business is suffering.
Okay.
And obviously, the more you're making, the more that 10% is a bigger number.
And I love that you. I mean, was that a day one thing for you, or
It was not day one, but it was not too far on
Yeah.
where I had regrets.
Yeah.
So again, when it comes to buying properties or allocating, those are things that I heard early enough
yeah,
that I wasn't I was debt free, that I wasn't money hungry. That I was
Yeah.
like, this is great knowledge to have. So
Yeah.
I just took it on probably less than a year of been in the business.
yeah? Because I see a lot of business owners that their business is their piggy bank, right? So everything the business takes home, they're taking home, and that gets you stuck, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, I think I said last season there was something about when you create your own money versus making it, like getting paid. Like when you create your money from what you think is scratch, you feel like you can always create money.
Right.
But if you're not doing those things first on the front end, that $25,000 check should never, as an entrepreneur, look like 25. It should look like maybe like 7 or 8 to you.
Right.
And then the rest are expenses for your lifestyle, for your future, for your kids, maybe for the next deal. Marketing is huge. I don't think enough people put money aside for marketing and have a marketing budget.
Right.
So I love that you do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's important to know that's not really all your money.
Yeah.
The faster you know that, the more you can stretch that money out.
It's crazy how much you know about this when just starting, 2018, 2019?
Yeah, so 2018 is when I found out about it, and then 2019 was my first check. But like I said, I do a lot of. I mean, since the YouTube University, I've paid a lot of money to be in rooms that that gives me access to people that I can learn from their mistake. Which is when I'm paying $10,000 to be in the mastermind, it's not so much of some new sales skills because you already have that. But when you're in the room, people that have done bigger deals than you and they failed on the maybe personal finance side. That's a very cheap price to pay.
That'll knock
to
out a
not
business. The business can run amazing.
Exactly.
If you aren't, what I'm saying, if your eyes are droopy because you've been eating noodles instead of
Right.
taking care of yourself,
right.
that business will die so fast.
Yeah, so that's how I learned a lot of my stuff is between self-teaching and also paying to be in rooms to learn some of those things.
What mistakes have you made that you'd like to share with the next generation of folks trying to do what you're doing?
I mean, a lot of the stuff I'm sharing is some of it is from learning from others and some of it is my mistake.
Yeah.
Let me think. I was good at not overly hiring, but I did almost get in that trap when things were really good during COVID, where interest was low. And I mean, most money I ever made in my life was that time because you were moving deals however you want.
Yeah.
And out of the, I think, spirit of wanting to capitalize and take advantage of that very short good time that lasted, I think I grew a little too fast, even though I thought I was being cautious. I grew to like, 9 cold callers. And even though they're $5 an hour, that still adds up pretty quickly. So, because not only are you paying for the staff, you're paying for their tools per person, their calling system and this and that. And so, I went from probably less than 10,000 a month to, I had 40 grand a month a couple times. And even though the gross is there, but you have to make sure the percentage is still there. So now I'm going from being used to 75%, 80% net business, which is quite common if you do it right in this business, which is crazy in most industries.
Right.
Most industries, you're happy with 15, 17% net, right? I was used to 70, 80%. And now I'm below 50. And below 50, that's when you get in the trap of you need that next check. And I was almost caught in that trap. And I had to just realize that I had to reel it back a little bit. So that was probably one of those close calls that, I had to kind of get back to my fundamentals.
I feel like prosperity is when a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they can do no wrong. And we always have a saying that when the tide pulls back, we'll figure out who was swimming naked.
Right.
When
Warren Buffett said that.
Yeah. And that tide pulls back, like, oh, you didn't have your stuff together.
Right.
So I love that. All right, man. Last question for the day. I know you're working on a lot of stuff. Is there anything you'd like to share? What are you working on now? What's kind of next for you?
Yeah, so on the business side, my current, my most focus right now, like we've talked about all during this conversation, I live what I preach. And right now my focus is acquisitions. So I have one of my biggest acquisitions I'm working on right now. God willing, that'll hit my social media pretty soon. I'm pretty excited about it. I'll be able to, grow my portfolio pretty significantly with just this one transaction. So I'm on the contract for that. So pray for me. And then, the more I share on social media, the more I realize people really, they yearn for knowledge that I take for granted. That I just assume people know this stuff. And two, I'm realizing people really are thirsty to change their life just based on where economy is, based on, not being able to feel like they're making enough money to sustain their family. So I've been focused just trying to help more people, like officially.
Yeah.
I've done it over the years. People hit my DM and I'll take the time to send them a voice note and tell them where to go on the website. But I'm trying to put a coaching kind of platform of being able to actually officially have people go somewhere. Because I've been asking nonstop. People are asking me every day, hey, do you have a course? Do you have a... So I don't know how it's going to all turn out yet when it comes to what products I'm going to offer. But at the very minimum, I'm doing consultations now, which I've always done before. But again, officially, I have a link in my Instagram at Elijah Bankole _. So you can go on there and I will give you game because I love seeing people win. So that's my current focus right now is acquisition, also helping people, gain knowledge to change their life, because this business truly can change your life if you do it right.
Or they should just start a podcast and get you to talk about it.
Or that.
For free. Right?
Or that.
No, so where do they get the coaching sessions again? They go straight to your Instagram and there's a link in there?
There's a link in there for my Calendly.
We'll put it on the screen. Oh, there it goes right there.
Yeah, there goes my Instagram. So if you come to Elijah Bankole _, hit the link in my bio and just tell me, hey, you heard my conversation from the podcast. Book a consultation call. I think it's damn near free from the value you're gonna get from it. I'm not selling you anything. You don't have to do it, but I'm just telling you that I'm gonna do my best to help you. It's the best way you can get in contact with me.
I appreciate it, man. This has been a great podcast today. I think I learned a lot, but then at the same time, I think your story is very your story is one where I think everybody can relate with. Versus, you didn't know anything about real estate and got into a lot of entrepreneurs. They usually find a skill they've always had and then try to capitalize off of it. You basically started from scratch. You used a lot of your resources, free resources, and then paid for some and sifted that out and figured out how to almost build what is in the process of being a conglomerate if it's not already. So congratulations to all your current and future success.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm very honored to be here, and hopefully we've helped somebody out there to realize, you work hard enough. It's all actually quite possible. So I appreciate you having me.
I love that. So if you guys like what, I'm going to call you Banky now, man.
Yeah.
If you guys like what Banky talked about today, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Make sure we like, don't thumbs down. And we'll see you next time on Common Sense.
I love it, man. Appreciate you, man. A guy.
That was good. That was God. That was so good.